Going back to our earliest days, and she's going to tell you that they're actually earlier than I think, because I'm going back to 1944. Perhaps she might go back a little further than that. But in 1944, Dad came to town for another revival meeting, set up a tent on a little, at that time called the Old Indian Cemetery. Now it's the Early Settlers Cemetery. But anyway, set up a tent. Church was born, I thought, out of that tent. But she's going to tell you probably a little bit more than that today, that there was quite a bit more activity before 1944 that contributed to the fact that this church was born. And she is the only one we've got. That's why I'm telling her to drink a gallon of Geritol every day. She is the only one we have that goes back to that tent. Everybody else is in heaven. And so that is the year of July, 1944, over 71 years ago. She was, well, I'm not going to say how old she was. She was in diapers somewhere around that time. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, she was around. She was a young girl, and she remembers it very well. She's going to share a few things. Now, you have a quiet voice. I want you to speak right into that.
Okay.
No, into this one.
Okay.
Make sure I
Keep it close.
want me, which one you want?
This one.
Okay.
Just hold it real close.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to try this morning to tell you about a revival, a tent revival that started in 1944. And today I don't feel worthy, but to stand here and try to say about
You're playing the drum while you.
Oh, okay. I know you'd be up here telling me that.
She calls me a little stinker anyway, so I got her back.
Nervous enough.
Yeah, but don't hit it against it.
Okay, I'll do that. Well, by the grace of God and His mercies to me this morning, I would just like to tell you about the wonderful work that was started by a man of God that was named Everett Hall. And back in the early 40s, when I first met Brother Hall, I knowed him as Everett Hall, and he came to Ohio County and held a revival at the Edinburgh Baptist Church. Well, that's when World War II was going on. So after that, in 1944, while we had moved to Owensboro, and my mother and this lady that lived across the street from where this revival was going to be held, she told her that a minister was coming and was going to hold a tent revival. You know, I never thought this would be the same minister that came and held the revival at the Baptist church there. So anyhow, I want to tell you that this revival was held. If you're coming from the west and going east, after you cross the railroad tracks, well, there on the left-hand side was a huge lot then. And now they have dedicated it to the Early Settlers Cemetery is what they call it. But on that park there was nothing there, no trees or anything. And Brother Everett Hall, as I knew him then, by that name. But pretty soon, well, I learned that they started calling him Peggy Hall. And so I didn't know. So I know Tim knows about the accident he had, and that's why that they was calling him that. You know, we have a way in Kentucky that don't make no difference what your last name is or first name is. We just hang a name on you, and we call you by that name. And I'm ashamed to say sometimes I don't know people when they call them by their real name because they've called them that nickname so long. But anyhow, this was a huge tent, and he set it up and rolled up the sides of it, and you could see any distance, any way you come, you could see what was going on with this tent. So we had the sawdust floor down all the way up to the altar and around the piano, but it had some more bark. It wasn't just the sawdust like you see today. Well, we had good preaching and good singing, and I tell you that people would come across, you could see the lights, the cars are coming up 9th Street, and they were looking and they were slowing down. It looked like kind of a parade to hear what was going on. And then some of them would go behind the tent and park and sit there and listen at the message and what was going on. And there were souls that was saved. And after the baptism, our brother Everett Hall, he went down where the boat dock is now and waded out in the water, and he was baptized there. And it was great. But at this time, Brother Hall was pastoring a church in Hazel Park, Michigan. So he left, and after the meeting was over, he left, and then he came back to Owensboro. He resigned and he come back. His pastor is a church there, and he came back to Owensboro. And so he wanted to find a place of worship there. I think when he was holding that meeting there in that tent, I believe that God laid on his heart there to start a place of worship in Owensboro. And as I walked up there the other day and I stood in that spot right where the tent was, well, I remember, now I ain't no Moses, but I remember when the Lord said, Moses, take your shoes off because this is holy ground. And I believe I felt the same spirit that there was there when he held that revival. So he come back to Owensboro, and he found the old broom factory down on 9th and Venable Street, and went in there and cleaned it up, and we started having services, good services there. And then he said, I want to build a church. So we got together and we built a church, the one that was a former Bible temple that they moved down to Cross Point. Now I'm going to hurry on. And there is where that I was when I went there, and I'd like to say to my children, to my son, and to my daughter, Krista, that are here today, they've come a long way to be in this service. But you know what? Them two kids, the first minister they ever heard was Brother Peggy Hall, and they was raised there up as teenagers under his preaching. So I know that I've got a limited time, and I'm going to try to close it there and let Brother Tim take it. But before I go, there is one thing I would like to say. I would like to thank the Lord for Johnny, because he's been an anchor to this church, and he's filled many positions in the church. And you know, sometimes we just pace up people and we don't give them the praise that they deserve. So I thank him this morning, and I thank him for encouraging me, and I thank all the people that has come today and all the members of the church that's worked so hard to make this day possible. And through the goodness and the mercies of the Lord, I stand here and I thank you, and welcome to the 70th anniversary of the First Free Will Baptist Church. So I just pray that I've had enough put together that you will know that Brother Tim and them will pick the rest of it up. Thank you, Johnny.